Everyone, it's great to be back at the Greenhouse All-Stars recap and discussion. Edmund, how was it last week without me here?
Very sad and lonely, but I had an amazing co-host to fill in. We got all the tea on the greenhouse, which you missed, so you better have watched it.
I for sure did, yeah.
How was your vacation besides getting me sick?
I didn't get you sick. That was Taylor, but other than that, my vacation was fun, filled with Polynesian
Oh.
sauce and dancing.
Well, speaking of Taylor, why don't we bring in one of our special guests?
The loser of the
Taylor.
Greenhouse draft.
I
Hey.
earned my stripes. I've earned my stripes with Meredith before. Thank you.
How are you, Taylor?
How are you today?
I'm also sick. I'm just going to say Edmund gave it to me.
Oh, so we're all just passing the blame around.
We are.
We know where it came from.
So our next special guest is fifth place icon themselves, Grandmama Abrielle. How are you?
Oh, I'm amazing now that I'm here with my arguably favorite people. Questionable queen of greenhouse drafts? I think official queen.
Oh.
Not this season, that's me. But
well, that's why Mother Papa.
Grandpapa.
Grandpapa. Up next, we have a runner-up, also a greenhouse legend, Ross. Ross, how are you?
How are we? Doing well. Good to be here. Listened every week. This is my dog Lily, by the way. Listened every week. You guys did a great job. It was fun reliving it through you guys.
Aw, thanks, Ross.
And the one that everyone's been waiting for all season long, the queen of the greenhouse seasons 1 through 5, every single season. This is her game, no one else's. It's Meredith.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Meredith, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's been so much fun, like Ross said, watching you guys recap the series and hearing your thoughts and watching it back myself. So really great stuff. I've been thinking all day about what I've got to say. I just went and watched all the exit interviews and voting confessionals, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm ready to go.
You came to the recap with receipts, I hear.
I have some receipts for the reunion. So some of the girls need to watch out for things that they said that they will be held accountable for. But I'm here as well. I'm ready to answer. I'm mostly curious about what questions you guys have and things that I think like we want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into this, I have a TMZ report. This is breaking greenhouse news. What is this? What is this? I was snooping on Taylor Luke's Instagram story and I saw this.
Oh my God.
Taylor, do you have anything to say? This looks oddly like you.
That's not me.
I
don't know her. She has good fashion taste, but I don't know her.
The
outfit. Okay. I thought our TMZ report was on something else, but I guess we're waiting for our breaking news report at the end.
TMZ said that she has another segment later on in the episode.
Okay. Well, 3 of the final 5, and Jessica's tuning in. So 4 of the final 5 are here today.
Yes.
You guys saw through the entire game. So I guess we'll talk about Ross and Meredith. You guys formed a relationship pretty early on. You guys also had relationships with just about everybody. So what started this relationship and kind of how did you guys maintain it so well with all the chaos going
on? So I can start. Sorry, this is Nora. She's
Hey, Nora.
And Greenhouse fan. But so on my end, I think I've tried to sort of pinpoint the sort of start of it as well, and we realized it was obviously round 2 is when we sort of really started to click. We talked a little bit in round 1, but it was so chaotic you didn't like. I mean, I definitely didn't like make some meaningful connections round one, but it just so happened that one of them was not with Ross until the next day. But for me, I think the main thing that got our relationship going was the fact that we had a similar point of view on what side of the house we were on. That it was very far from meaningful sides being formed, but we were noticing that Thomas and Shakira had a lot of sway with a good number of people in the house. And while it wasn't necessarily a meaningful like alliance necessarily, it was still something we were both able to recognize as having the potential to become a serious alliance. And I think we both saw ourselves as on the outside of that. That was sort of my thing, and why I ended up nominating the two of them the next round is that I saw Thomas and Shakira as very powerful players and getting a lot of attention from a lot of the house in a good way. And that they were not interested in working with me based on the conversations I was having with them. So the longer I allow that to continue, the more likely it is I get shut out of the game. And Ross saw the same thing. Patrick saw the same thing. I was going around and sort of implying this to as many people as I could to see who was on the same page. And when Ross and I like heard each other say it, it was like, thank God somebody's seeing reason, because so much of the house was like, oh, we'll take care of that later. It's not a big deal, or like they were in on it, so it wasn't affecting them. So that was the main thing that I think sort of ignited the fact that like we were on the same page, and we both are very much direct people and honest players, and so we were getting the right vibes off of each other, and it made it really easy to, in a couple of rounds, build trust that became very quickly unshakable. And then that relationship obviously served us super well throughout the rest of the show and the series, because when you are able to put 100% of your trust in another player, you can do what you do best. And we do different things best. And so because we never had to worry about the other person or their loyalty, we were just locked in. We got to do what let us thrive, and it benefited both of us. And I think that was sort of the secret that got us through this game and let us have a lot of success as a duo.
Just like in the jury round, Meredith said it better than I ever could. So that's pretty much exactly what it was. It was a twofold thing. One was that we both realized that I know Thomas got like what, 12th or 13th. You'll never convince me that Thomas is the 12th or 13th best player in that house. Thomas is one of the best players in that house. And we both knew that we were not ever going to be on his inner circle. And so that kind of, once we both realized that, and then we both kind of saw that in each other, we started working together. And then I think it really developed. What she said is the most kind of important thing, at least for me. Different people play differently. But when I knew that I didn't have to worry about her flipping on me, or at least I thought I didn't, and she didn't. I didn't, but I also thought that in season 4, and we saw how that turned out. But it let us kind of play. I've said I think the Greenhouse is a team game disguised as an individual game, and the stronger you can make your team, the better off you'll be. And that's kind of what I just kept on repeating the entire day. I think 3 was that it's R3 against their 3 or R4 against R4, and I like R4 better. And it was just because I had so much faith that Meredith was going to do her thing, which was a very different thing than what I was going to do. But together, it was going to be really hard to beat.
Ariel, you were kind of, I guess, self-coined Chicken Little this season, preaching from the mountaintop about Meredith and Ross's really strong connection and their stranglehold on the Greenhouse. How early did you notice this? And what did you do to try and get some traction? I mean, obviously we saw you preaching to everybody, but what do you think you did in your game to really try and upset that narrative?
Not enough, obviously. When did I notice? Oh, I don't know, because anytime I try to remember specific moments from that weekend, it is like just war flashbacks going on. I mean, you're so intensely in the game, in the moment, thinking about 80 other different things that when I caught on to them specifically, I don't know, but I think I always had an eye on Meredith because we are not strangers. We've been in this together before. And by together, I mean not together in a game before. And that never turns out well for me. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I got to watch out for Meredith. I got to watch out. This could be bad. But it was so early. And then once it started rolling. So I thought that planting that seed, telling as many people as I did, would hopefully get things moving. Because I'm more of a under the radar kind of player. That's just how I play. I mean, Edmund and I were together. I play better when like my back's against the wall. I'm scrappy when I need to be, and if I don't need to be, I don't want to put too much of attention on myself too early. And I thought, all stars, kind of like what Meredith did, like feeling out the Thomas and Shakira thing. When I brought it up, people were like kind of receptive, and I was like, okay, someone's gonna take care of this. I can just chill. Nobody ever took care of it. And, me neither, but it's okay. It's because I can't win comps to save my life. Yeah, so I think I always knew Meredith's just a queen through and through, so you gotta watch out. And then Ross is a 5th place buddy, so I knew they were both capable, and I filmed season 4, so I knew they were both very capable, and it wasn't until it was like grossly apparent that it was not going to end well that I was like, well, I guess I have to win something. And then I did, and then green thumb. So
Well, Abrielle, Meredith kind of touched on these kind of loose, not so defined sides at the beginning, but that there was groups forming. And you obviously had a connection to season 3 and the Thomas and Shakira of it all. So would you say you were more in their camp at first, or were you just kind of trying to float around and play nice with everyone?
Well, I definitely was trying to play nice with as many people as I can, because that's also just how I play. Is I'm gonna be besties with everybody, so that nobody wants me gone. But I guess having that season 3 connection was a good jump start of there's so much chaos in the house at any given moment. There's so many things going on. I know you guys like were comfortable. Let's see how it goes. And I know we did have that one conversation where all of season 3 was in a room, but oh my God, I'm not dumb. I wasn't going to do that. Like, if they were like, yeah, season 3, final 5, I would have been like, yeah. No, Thomas and I were close. Shakira and I were not as close, very similarly in our season. Not that I didn't want to work with Shakira, but Shakira's better than me. I'm always scared of Shakira. So if it was between those two, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to save Thomas because at any given moment, people will wake up and boot Thomas. And I remember hearing like the kind of inklings from that like other side that Thomas needed to go. I was like, that'll get taken care of eventually. Thomas and I are cool, so I have no reason to go after Thomas. Shakira and I weren't as close as we could have been. And that's just how the chaos of the day went. And then Shane and Brady.
I was actually going to ask you, Meredith, when you brought up the fact that you were going after Thomas and Shakira, and Ross, I think you even kind of touched on it too, how Thomas was kind of this nucleus of the other side. So why did it end up that Shakira was booted first before Thomas? Was it kind of what Abrielle said, that Thomas was a bigger target for later, or were you guys kind of just going with what the house wanted at that point and either or was fine?
So, I mean, I was the person who nominated, so I didn't get to vote.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, no. But for me, I was advocating to get Thomas out over Shakira. And this was for a lot of reasons. And I think why it didn't work is a lot of the reasons why I wanted it to is that Thomas plays an incredible social game and people trust him and he's a very good strategic player. And so people sort of want him in their corner, guiding the strategy of the alliance that they're in and the side that they're on. and some players view him as a bigger target that they can use as a shield. And I go back and forth on shield theory, and there's times to use it and there's times to not. And I think I think that situation was not the time. Thomas was clearly going to have a lot of control for the rest of the game, and it needed to happen. And it just would have freed up a lot of other people's games had that sort of center of gravity on that side of the house been eliminated. And Shakira was more forthright with me and more my style of communicator. I think that I knew I would have been able to work with her much more so than I would have with Thomas. And so that was sort of my mentality, that I was advocating for Thomas to go, but I think people just felt like they could play a longer and better game with him. And the way that Shakira reacted in that round was also a huge part of it, that I was very confused by this in real time, and people mentioned this in the episode as well, that like, shouldn't she be fighting to play? But they really got upset at her for fighting for herself when that involved throwing Thomas a little bit under the bus. But like, I felt like she was entitled to do that, and I see nothing wrong with it. And to me, like, that's the player you want to keep, like someone who's willing to fight and to make a move. But yeah, that was my perspective on it, the Sunflower.
I think it's a testament to how good Thomas is. Like, that's almost a perfect example of why Thomas is as good as he is that he was able to stay there. But when we were eventually able to get him out, I do think that it became evident that he was kind of the sun holding their planets together. And it just, things became a lot, I don't want to say easier, but I feel like he was leading that other side against our side, whereas kind of Meredith and I were not in charge, but kind of the ones leading the pack over here, and Thomas was the one leading the pack over here. And when we kind of cut off the head of the snake, they all went scrambling in different ways, and it just became I think that was probably one of the defining moments that led our side to kind of grab power and not really let it go.
I think Ross is really right. I think Thomas was Ross if Abrielle is me. And I think if that, you know what I mean? Like, she is often reading, strategizing. And while Thomas is also a great strategic player and Abrielle is also a great social player, he is often the one able to gather the troops, while Abrielle is in the background orchestrating, and they complement each other really well, and could have, and run the game the same way that we did because we had each other. I think it's a very similar dynamic between the two of them as it was with us. And so taking out the person who was going to be able to gather the troops when Abrielle was trying to, and no one would listen,
but
the person they might have actually listened to was taken away from her, might have been how we ended up crippling that entire side, and particularly Abrielle's game, when for whatever reason, they don't listen to it when it comes from her, even though she has a track record for being right. And it doesn't make any sense. I'll say, I don't know what everyone was thinking, but clearly in those earlier rounds, you can see that Thomas gets those things done.
Mm-hmm.
And people drink the juice. When the juice ran out, like Ross said, they scrambled, and the organization was never there after that.
Agreed.
So speaking of organization, kind of going into the split house round, I feel like that kind of opened the game a lot. And between the three of you had two very different sides of the spectrum of how their game went there. So I guess Meredith and Ross, how did it feel after you guys like had your whole round like kind of planned out, everything was good, like we all knew that Ava was going, and then merging together and hearing that it's just a shit show on the other side?
But actually, before you guys start, because I was going to go into this split house twist also, I feel like the Ava round is honestly the most lying we see all season. Just bold-faced lying, buttering her up to be fed to the wolves. So I know the reasoning why you guys did it was because of the merging before the auction. But more so, I guess, just touch on that because you guys did play very honest games, but that was kind of where you guys were in your nasty era.
Meredith is a good line. I don't know did you just tell it to me, Meredith, about what you told Ava about how do you remember what it was? It was Ava was talking to Meredith about like what was going on, and Meredith, instead of saying, and stop me if I get it wrong, but Meredith, instead of saying like, oh yeah, like you're good, she said something along the lines of, me, Ross, and Patrick are all on the same page. Like, but in a reassuring tone. But the words were never, you're fine. The words were, we all agree on what we're doing. And she interpreted it as, you're fine. But in reality, she just told her that, oh no, we're unanimously going to vote you out. She just didn't know at the time.
Yeah, that's about what happened. That it was post-merge, and I wasn't clear on how many seats Ava had. But she was telling me, what she said to me was, I won't buy Uproot if you can look at me and tell me I'm safe. And I talked to the voters were myself, Patrick, and Lily. And she said, I talked to Patrick and Lily, and so I need to hear it from you that I'm safe. And I couldn't tell her that. So what I said was, Patrick, Lily, and I are all on the same page. And we were, and that was, well, truthfully, I'm not a good liar. I'm really not. And so I can do little tricksy things like this when in my head it's not lying. The way I think of it is in terms of an Emily Dickinson quote, tell the truth, but tell it slant. So this was very much a slanted truth coming from me. She interpreted it the way she was supposed to. And I did this throughout the game with a lot of people. That like people say things to me and I go like, okay, great, sounds good. And I don't necessarily reciprocate what they're saying. I'm just accepting it. And people interpret what they will, how they will, and I don't necessarily confirm or deny things unless I very much intend to. And that's just how my brain operates. That's a very much like a hyper literal black and white thinking autistic brain moment. So that was the tools I had available to me with the Ava round. And so that's what I did. And yeah, so that was our big scheming round. And it was because we were worried about the Uproot potential that we only had so many people available to us and we wanted to protect the majority of them. And that's just a tough situation to be in. So you want to be on guard with the Uproot because of the renom and you want it to go the way that you need it to. And we didn't want any fuss with it because it's all, when we saw how the other side went, there was a lot of fuss and that continued to have consequences for them. And it was much more tense, which was insane to answer the other sort of side of this question that when they came back and were like literally traumatized, we were in shock because we had no idea that it was going to be that complicated for them. Like we had really thought through what it meant that we were all on the same page and therefore they must all be also on the same page. Well, because like we were mostly allies in one house. And if all our allies are here, then they also must all be allies, I guess what I'm trying to say. And we didn't really think through that meant that something dramatic was going to happen because we were handed one clear target. And they were almost handed two, but the way that Shane got into the greenhouse and Brandon let him have a flower was all the way this sort of spiraled out of control. And Thomas ended up nominated. And yeah, it was, I learned a lot that round. That was a very pivotal round for me internally because of the way certain dynamics became very, very clear. I think I would say most of the cast sort of felt that way, that round was a lot of like learning things about like, okay, that's where you stand, that's where you stand. It all got very much revealed. And so things that I did later very much started in that round. So it was, that was definitely one of the most important pivotal rounds of the game.
I'm definitely saving your Emily Dickinson quote for the next time I play. for when they call me a liar. Just withhold some of the truth. But Abrielle, speaking of the drama in your side of the house, how did you navigate that?
That was, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack the whole round because every single person, and I mean every single person except for Lily that I was working with closely, like super closely, they were all there. Everyone in the room. And I'm one of the only people who can vote. Oh, ooh, that's bad. I looked at the house and I was like, okay, all right, cool, I'm good. I'm gonna be fine this round. And I was fine, but I didn't have fun. Like it sucked. And I think I'll probably touch on this a few times, but there were moments where Shane and I could have been very much on the same page. We were always saying very, very different things from each other, and I don't think either of us was wrong. It was just like we were so opposite from each other's mindsets. If there had been like a minute more in one of our conversations, that round could have gone so different. Thomas probably would have gone home there. Because we were really thinking about it, and it happens later on in the season where we're talking to each other and we're saying very, very opposite things. And if we had less stressful energy in the room, it could have been like Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment. Like it could have been so different. And that round, I was literally like, you know that meme where this kid has like painted themselves with white paint and is like up against the wall trying to hide? That was me. I was like, don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't ask me to do anything. Put me on the block so I don't have to do anything. Like I'm not going home. I really don't care. It was bad. It was everyone that I'm working with, but not in a solidified group, is all in the same place trying to make a decision, and I can't say too much or they're gonna kill me.
I was gonna say, speaking of Shane, but first I actually want to touch, Meredith, on your relationship with Christian, because you kind of go to bat for Christian during the fly chop round. You put your foot down with Ross and Patrick, I believe. Yeah. And you were like, we are not going for Christian. We are going for Thomas, with the help of Shane, of course, as well. But you kind of just toss him to the wolves the next round anyways. Do you want to talk on that a little bit?
Sure, and also hi, Christian. But yeah, so that's sort of what I was actually referring to as one of the big revelations for me during the split house was the true nature of my relationship with Christian. And so basically in the mid section of the split house, when we were allowed to interact with the other side, I ended up in a room with Christian and Lily for some reason. And he started asking us about our side. And again, in the way that like, I'm not a good liar, but I don't know who I can trust or what I can say. Christian repeatedly asks like, oh, so who's on the block? Who's going home? What's going on? And Lily and I just completely skirt his questions. And we said like, oh, Ava and Jess are on the block. So, you know, it's a pretty reasonable thing. Like, and just like, don't answer the question at all. And it's because I didn't know exactly how he felt about Ava and exactly where he stood with just some of the broader implications that round could have had. And I couldn't get a feel for where he stood on Ava, so I couldn't tell him the truth about that round. But when I asked him how his house was going, he says the options are Claire, who is alone, desperate, fighting, has no allies, and whose loyalty can be bought right now for a very low price, while also getting rid of one of the biggest threats in this game, who's actively targeting me, by the way. And he tells me he's keeping Thomas. Watch the mega cuts for just like a genuinely really funny scene, and it only didn't turn into like a serious fight because Lily was laughing the entire time. That Christian tells me he's saving Thomas, and I said why? And like I just asked him why like 6 times in a row because I can't wrap my head around not taking the opportunity to take out a major threat. And he tells me it's because he's working with Thomas. And I don't see why that's a good idea. And I asked him why. He's like, oh, well, like, can't really explain himself to me in a way that's not blatantly obvious that this is not a good thing for me. But he like genuinely says to my face, I'm loyal to Thomas and I'm loyal to you. And like, I can see on my own face watching the footage, like, this is the moment I lose trust in Christian. It's over for me at that moment, more or less. Like, I think he still could have maybe salvaged it, handling things different later. But when Thomas is actively going to get retribution on me for nominating him and for going after him, you cannot be working with both me and Thomas. There's no way that that makes sense. And when I hear you say that to me, I know I'm not your priority. I can't trust you. You are going to ditch me whenever it's convenient, and you're not going to protect me from someone who's coming for me because you're also loyal to him. So that's not going to work. And I very much realized that in real time. And again, in the mega cut, you can see a conversation I have with Brody where it's like, yeah, no, I now know I fully cannot trust Christian. And so the next round, when the fly trap comes out, to me, it's another obvious situation that like the person who's gunning for me is one of our options. I would like him to be gone, please. Otherwise, like, I'm going to stay in trouble. And Christian, yeah, like, nominated the other people who were involved in the fly trap. But I, from, again, that same conversation, knew that if Christian didn't have Thomas to go back to, I was going to be one of the main people he was going to turn to, especially when he was pissing off my allies. And he's going to need a way to survive that. And I felt like I would have Christian's loyalty moving forward from the fly trap if I was vocally saving him and Thomas was gone. And I was going to cut down his options, and that's where we got the episode title. I love people with no options. So that all made perfect sense to me. And then the next round, we are nominated against each other. And so I truly, in my heart of hearts, cannot consider it a betrayal to uproot myself and not give him seeds for uproot against me. I truly can't conceive of that as me betraying him. I didn't nominate him. I did not instigate this. And if he had come to me and instead of saying, give me seeds for uproot, said like, what's our strategy right now? We're both nominated. How can we turn this against Brady? What are we gonna do? Like, should we do uproot? What's the best plan? And like worked with me as an ally, a real ally, which he did not consider me. This is my perspective on it. We'll see what Christian has to say, but I think Christian's perspective on me going into this game was that he was playing with season 1 Meredith, who's not a social player and is not going to give myself options. And so he's going to scoop me up and lead me along and keep me as a number and someone who can take power because I'm good at comps. And I'll do whatever he says, and I'm going to go along with him. And if he wants to turn on me at any point, he can, because I don't give myself other social opportunities, and I'm going to be an easy out whenever he wants. And he was very wrong about that and the version of Meredith he was playing against. And that's just a big underestimation on his part. And even when he was specifically told that he was wrong about this, he ignored it. Like in the split house, the house side was saying like the 3 are Ross, Patrick, and Meredith. And he goes, no, it's the alpha males, and thinks that Brody has my spot. In the alliance that I not necessarily created, but was the center of, that like Ross and Patrick weren't allies with each other except through me. And Christian and Brody continued to be wrong about this for quite some time. So like that's my perspective on Christian, that he was wildly underestimating me and thought he could string me along and was treating me that way and wasn't listening to me and was not ever treating me as an equal in this game. And so when he came to me and said, give me seeds for uproot, it's because he thought I'm easy to manipulate, that I am his number, and that the sort of power relationship we had was reversed from what it actually was. I had options, I had allies, I had power, and he could not just demand things of me. And that's not the type of ally I even want. My relationship with Ross and my relationship with Patrick and other people I consider genuine allies treat me as an equal. And we work together and we come up with solutions together and we move forward with each other's best interests in mind. And some people in this game don't see alliances that way. They see them as numbers and people in the herd that they're gathering. And they don't keep anyone else's best interest but their own at heart. And I think that's a way to play. And like Ross said, I think it's a team game disguised as a single player game. And I do often think that a better way to play is to treat alliances as your game is the other people's game. And when I sense that someone is not giving me that type of allyship, I'm not interested. I can't fully trust you if at some point you're going to turn on me or it's not going to be good enough or you get a better offer. And that's why I started going after all of the similar players after Christian. Because next to it was Shane and then Brady and Brody. It was that entire stretch of the Shady Boy section of the game. Because I would genuinely rather play with people I'm against, especially ones that are going to be straight up with me, like someone like Lily, than people who might be with me and are saying they're with me, but they're saying that to everyone. And this round they might be with me, but the next they're not. I'm not interested in a guessing game. This is a numbers game. And if I don't know who you're a number 4, I don't want you here. I need to count. And that's what matters. And so that's basically the long version.
It's okay.
I did what I had to do to protect myself in the round he went home. If he had handled it differently, he didn't have to go home. But I had already long since realized he was not evaluating my place in this game properly and was not treating me with the respect as a player that I deserved. And I have very low tolerance for that.
The tea is piping, I must say. We're going to save the rest of that for the reunion. Someone got a little quiet in the comments, but sorry, no shade. But before we move on to the Shady Boys, because I do want to talk about them, Ross, I just want to give you the floor to talk about going from Fly Trapped to Fly Trapper. How did it feel to have that power in your hands this time around?
It was fucking electric. It was unbelievable, especially because night 1, I was fairly certain that I was going to get Fly Trapped again. And you guys might be normal, or you might be like me, to where, like, whenever Taylor told me that I was on All Stars, I was like, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait. Like, this is going to be at least 2 days. Like, I'm not gonna get first out, I don't think, at least. And so, like, I'll at least have a few days of playing this game. It was so much fun the first time I played. This is only the second time I ever played one of the games. And I had so much fun the first time, like, can't wait to come in. And then the first thing, right when I walk in, is like, oh, season 4 has an Instagram picture with the 4 of them doing an escape room 45 minutes before they came here. So we got to get one of them out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not going well. This is, it could not have been a more nightmare scenario that first night. Taylor's little shenanigans with the first night Venus flytrap, so mean, so genius, but like so much stress that night. And I was fairly certain that I was going home. And that was the whole thing about, like, well, if I'm going to go home, I'm not going to suck up to Brody to try to get him to save me. I'm going to try to fight back, because you guys obviously are aware that Claire and I are cousins now, and Brody's married to Claire. So I have to see Brody at Christmas. And if he has over me every Christmas, like, you begged. And by the way, Brody is the person that would do that. You begged for me to save you, and I still got you out. Like, fuck that. That wasn't happening. So I was going to try to fight back. Luckily, it didn't work out. Anyway, fast forward. Doing the fly trap was awesome. It wasn't I think it was partially my idea, but the first people who, like, sowed the seeds were Shane and Patrick, who I think are, after Meredith, the next 2 most important people to my game. And I'll say that to anyone. I think that both of them, I don't get to the end without both of them. But then Meredith had that famous line about, she walks up to me and she goes, we might have made a slight miscalculation. Whenever me, her, and Patrick are all on the block, it's like, yeah, we did. And so everyone was like, okay, I think we have the seeds, but do we want to do it? And who's going to do it? And I was like, all right, screw it. I'll do it. I kind of thought that was going to be suicide for my game. It ended up not. I ended up making it to the end, so that was great. But it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend, if in the future anyone has the opportunity to buy the fly trap, go ahead and buy it. It's a lot of fun standing there. But overall, it was great.
I do want to ask a logistics question, just because season 3 was all one day. It was so short.
Don't know how y'all did that.
How long did you have to actually have conversations about the fly trap?
Once I bought it, or like before we bought it?
I guess, yeah, you had some time during the auction to talk about it. But yeah, once you bought it, was it pretty immediate?
So we put it down, and everyone who wasn't aware what was going on kind of freaked out. And they started scrambling. And then so Christian and Thomas and everyone starts coming up to try to talk to me because they know. And I ended up pulling a move that y'all saw me. I was a little drunk with power. It was a little embarrassing watching it back. How many times what was the phrase I kept on saying? It was a democratic process. How fucking annoying. So I ended up just like announcing to the house, this is only a little bit. We got plenty more. And if anyone bids on it again, we're going to outbid you. And the person who bid against me is going to be the one going up, just to try to discourage any more spending, because I didn't want to spend any more. And so I'd say from the time I bid on it until the time we got Thomas out, what do you guys think? Like 30 minutes? It wasn't that long.
Oh my gosh, I wish.
It was like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And Christian put in a quick plea, and I talked to Brandon for a bit, and I talked to Thomas for a bit, but it was not that long. It was more building up to that point. And then once we had bought it, things kind of moved pretty fast, I think. But once again, all a blur. So maybe it was 3 hours, but it felt quick.
Okay. So let's move on to the Shady Boys, because this is a string of the flip-floppers, and yeah. So obviously Meredith and Ross, you guys are like the nucleus to your side that we said. Abrielle, you kind of have a relationship obviously with Brady and Shane. So you guys can answer in whatever order or whatever you want to do. But just kind of the downfall, quick crumble of Shane. I kind of want to talk about that. And then I want you guys to touch on your relationship with Brady and how like serious that was, or if that was just always a short-term 3-round type deal. And yeah, y'all can answer that however you like.
Abby, you go first.
Okay, so the downfall of Shane and our relationship to Brady. So, split house round, Shane was gonna go home. And then Shane won power, so Shane didn't go home. But there was also, from early on, this understanding between Shane and Brady and I that we were working together. And I think it could have gone really, really well if we didn't get pulled. Like Shane and I, Brady was Bradying and was gonna do what Brady had to do, but Shane and I very much were going to opposite sides from each other, which is fine, but we never got a full real conversation about it. And I think there's something in Shane's podcast where it's like, you haven't listened for me to me in 2 rounds, like I don't want to work with you, fuck off. And it was the same sentiment both ways. Like Shane was really upset that I put him up when my other options were people that I was working with closer. And at that point in the game, I was like, I don't know if like Shane and I can salvage anything. Like closest allies are Meredith and Ross, which are the people that I'm probably most afraid of, and like nothing's budging. But I remember being like, oh, I do feel really bad. But watching it back, how did Shane not see it coming? From the vibe in the split house when Shane won, it was uncomfortable. Like you could have picked up on it. Shane knew he probably was going to go home. I threw Shane under the bus, like boldly to Claire, like in front of everyone, just lied and said Shane did something he didn't. And then we weren't listening to each other. We were very much on opposite sides. Why were you surprised I put you on the block? It was unfortunate, just because I know that we're both very headstrong people. And if we are on the same page, it's going to be very difficult for us to get on the same page. But based on who ended up in the final 3, I think I was right. But I think we're just both very strategic players and very headstrong players, and when we don't line up and there's very little wiggle room to meet in the middle, it's hard to keep that going. I think a lot about the conversation that Brady has with Jessica about making a Final Four with the three of us that I never
I was
heard
going to bring
about.
that up. I was going to bring that up because Jessica was Ross's right-hand woman, right? And then you kind of see Jessica switches for a minute and she says, I like this four. I want to work with this four, to where that could have been an ultimate flip in the game, but it never comes to fruition.
It could have been such a good flip, but Brady never said anything about it. But that brings me to Brady. Again, I think that Brady, Shane, and I could have been a real powerhouse. And it just kind of depended on how the rounds were going. And the reason that I was willing to cut Shane is inevitably why the same reason I was willing to cut Brady, because I was like, oh, okay, well, the people that I'm most afraid of, you were working very closely with. There is not going to be any wiggle room for me to go work with Meredith and Ross. Not at this point. Like maybe earlier in the Shane round. But I was like, they already have too much power. Why would I flip? Like, I'm trying to work against that. But especially with Brady, I was like, bestie, please. I would have loved Brady and I to sit at the end together. I would have loved it. Brady was someone that I very much prioritized for a long time, because I know everybody gives Brady a lot of shit for just like doing shit like that's not what most players would do, but that doesn't mean Brady's a bad player. Brady is kind of what Meredith touched on. People underestimate Meredith. I think people underestimate me, and then when the time comes where like I'm screaming the sky is falling, nobody wants to listen. And I don't know what it is. I see something similar in Brady, to where people are gonna underestimate us. And I think that sometimes that's valuable. Like, yes, I'm gonna work with Brady. Nobody's worried about Brady. Like, Brady's just doing his thing. And eventually it does crash and burn because Brady tries to jump ship. Which was understandable. But then I was like, well, I can't keep anybody in this boat. I cannot keep anybody in this boat. And I can't drive the boat by myself. Who's going to hoist the little sails? Who's going to steer? I can't do it by myself. So I was like, okay, Brady's got to go. And at that point, it was between Brady and Lily. And I think it was very close. Like, they were both like the closest I was to each other, but Lily won just by that little bit. But I think things could have gone very differently in that end game. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later because I have lots to say.
Mm-hmm. Meredith and Ross? Because y'all were just letting your allies go left and right at the end there. So talk about why you prioritize who you prioritize. And also, I guess we'll talk about Brandon a little later, but kind of where Brandon wiggles himself in. He's really the only one to really break through that tight three of you guys.
So I did sort of touch on this in my rant about Christian, but for me, it's a matter of security, that I know the game I'm playing when I can see the sides and people who are perceived to be playing the middle, and who, even if I think they're with me, I think would be the most likely candidate to jump ship when they need to, or to prioritize their game over the alliance, are people I'd rather see out than people who are fully not with me. And that's just the mental math that I do. I don't know if it's the best strategy. It's just the game I know how to play. I need to see what's in front of me. And I felt like those players were obscuring my vision and throwing distractions. And it was very much chaotic. So that's my general philosophy with how these rounds went, that I needed to see the path forward clearly. And that involves knowing who I'm with and who I'm against. But so Shane in particular, part of me like super regrets where Shane went out, how and why. because looking back was all a big misunderstanding. It was not the way I would have done it had I known the things I know now. On the other hand, I'm so glad we got rid of Shane when we did, because Shane's incredible. Shane could have beat me at this game, and Shane could have turned against us. And I think Gabrielle was sort of wrong in her assessment, that getting rid of Shane actually gives you less wiggle room, because I think he is more likely than someone like Patrick per se. Even though Patrick did actively try to turn against us, or at least me, you didn't have as much of a relationship with Patrick. And so when at the last minute Patrick is scrambling, saying like, I'll flip on them, we have to get, no, I agree, I'm getting rid of Meredith, like all of this stuff, no one wants to listen to him because he's not in with the other side. But Shane had been working with you, Gabrielle, the entire time. And so if in the same position Shane says like, no, you were right, I've seen the light and I hope it's not too late, like you have a relationship to fall back on and something to go with. And he would have gone to you above anyone else when he saw the things that you did, that myself or Ross was going to win the game. If he got worried about our loyalty, you were going to be the person Shane went to. And I think it's the same with Brady, that those were better opportunities for you. And they are people who might have not stayed as loyal to us, because that's just the game that they were playing. I think Shane is extremely strategic, and could have made the right assessment day 3, and is more willing to be cutthroat and not as loyal as myself and Ross. So as much as we were a trio, if anyone was going to be the defector, it would have been him. And by allowing Patrick to fill that 3rd spot when you did, it meant that you cut off your own relationship. So that's something. But for myself and Shane, I think what went wrong was sort of like after the split house, we didn't really get a chance to check in a lot. So there's a lot of things that I didn't know and never got context for. So my sort of order of events goes from like becoming allies with Shane to watching the round where I was Sunflower. He was fighting really hard for Shakira and wanted her to stay really bad. And when she went, he was pissed. And to me, I have no idea why he cares when I think both of them need to go. So Shane being upset and fighting for Shakira is very much a red flag to me, that he has other loyalties and other priorities. And that was very suspicious to me. So I was suspicious of Shane from that. And then we go into the split house and I don't see him for a full round. And then it's the fly trap and we're focused on that. And we don't really have a chance to sit down and talk. And then the round after that is Monopoly, which again, chaos, separate rooms, and just all of this stuff buzzing around. He's having a public feud with Brandon, like all of these things. And then I get nominated, and in real time, he is fighting for me to stay in this game and willing to go into a bidding war with Gabrielle for uproot between me and Christian. And I never know about that. I will literally never find out that that's happening and that Shane is fighting for me and willing to spend his seeds on me. And because I never know that, and we haven't checked in and had a lot of time in rounds, the sort of distrust I have of Shane has been allowed to sit and stay. And then the next thing I'm told about Shane is that he's been playing both sides. He's been telling our business to the other side of the house, that he's in the middle. And I'm told this by Brady and Brandon primarily. And for me, when the last thing I remember about Shane is him being pissed about Shakira leaving, this makes sense. That fits into my narrative, and I've never had it corrected. And so I'm willing to believe it, and I'm willing to send Shane home for it. When in truth, like, he was loyal to us. He was playing the middle, but in a way that was loyal. And I did say to Ross at one point, like, it's not that I don't think he is loyal to us. He might be. But the fact that he's not communicating it clearly enough that I feel like I can't trust him, and we're put in this position where somebody has to go, it's going to be Shane right now. So it was a tough one, and in retrospect, like, we didn't need to do it, but also, did we for the ending to stay the same? I can't change a thing. Can't change a thing because I might not win if I change anything. So hard to regret stuff, but I wish I had known differently, because I feel like it wasn't fair to Shane necessarily, who was playing a more loyal game than I knew. Brady, on the other hand, Brady, I feel like, is one of my biggest, like, missteps in this game. I misunderstood Brady off the bat. I think he has somewhat like golden retriever energy. And I think I interpreted it as being like a performance and being very like fake, I guess, when I don't feel that way anymore. I just didn't know him well enough to sort of read that, but that's just how he is all the time. But when he came and approached me with that energy, and I'm not very used to it, it sort of felt like he was playing me and was very much like not interested in working with me and wanted to make me feel like he was. And I don't like that at all. And so I just didn't know how to communicate with him, and I was perceiving him the wrong way. And so that sort of set me up to not want to work with Brady a ton. And from my perspective, when he approached me and Patrick in the upstairs room, sort of during the Monopoly or after that round, when he said he wanted to jump ship and join us, truthfully, how I perceive that, I literally didn't care at all. I didn't need him. I didn't take that seriously as an offer, and I didn't care if it was a serious offer because we didn't need him. I think after he left, Patrick and I just like laughed. And it's like genuinely no offense to Brady, but like we were in such a golden position and we knew that, that we're just like, and they're offering themselves to us, like cute. But to me, that was never really a thing, that never had momentum. And I had one of my worst social moments in the game with Brady a few rounds later, the round he goes home. We had a conversation where what I thought I was doing was trying to tell him like, oh, out of our 4, never a thing, you would be 4th, and I'm worried the boys are going to cut me out and make a final 2, and I'm just going to get 3rd. And Brady took this as like a threat, and got really upset that I said that to his face. And I am just miserably bad at like lying, and I'm a work in progress as a social player. So this was not my moment, but I was trying to like warn him and sort of act like I was the only person telling him the truth, that like, this is not a winning strategy for you. And I don't think it's a winning strategy for me. I was never worried about getting cut out at 3rd. There was never a thought in my mind that Ross or Patrick would betray me. I was super wrong about Patrick. That's okay. It didn't matter anyway. But I was never worried about that. I was trying to communicate to Brady like, oh, I'm the only one being honest with you. You can trust me more than them. Maybe we should make an exit strategy and we should have an alliance. And I was trying to like open a door for him and make sort of an offer. And that's sort of how he responded in real time. I'm like, oh, then we should do something about that. And I said, yes. And then he went and told everyone, Meredith hates me. Meredith is going to murder me in cold blood. She's the worst person I've ever met. And I was like, oh my God, like watching it, I'm horrified how poorly this went. So truly one of my biggest flubs of the game, truly not what I intended. That went so poorly, but also it didn't matter at all because I was never actually interested in Brady. He was never a 4th for us. And I don't think at that point, like his game was necessarily salvageable, especially with Abrielle's perspective that like she needed to cut him. That's the side he needed to be working on. He needed to flip back, get back in the boat. It wasn't sinking. It never was. They had all of the opportunities and the resources they needed. People just kept abandoning Abrielle in this boat. But it was a perfectly functional, buoyant boat. So honestly, I don't know exactly what happened there.
I have blame.
Yeah, I mean, but
I have blame. I have a finger to point.
Yeah, no, I think you have a couple, and that's fair. But that's sort of the Shane and Brady of it for me.
I think that letting Shane go was one of my bigger regrets of the entire game because that guy was awesome for me personally and for our side, and we would have been stronger with him. But Shane was not my number 1 ally. Meredith was. And when I first started talking to Meredith when Shane was up, she was like, no, let's get Shane out. And at that point, I have to choose. Do I want to start like a fight? Not a fight, but like even a conversation where Meredith and I aren't gelling? Or do I just go with this? It's the last – was that the last round of the night?
Yeah, it was. But also you're allowed to disagree with me.
At that point, I was not. At that point, it's like it's late, and my girl just said she wants him to go out, and I'm sure she has good reasons. I caught a lot of shit, maybe justifiably so, from just going along with Meredith's plans. I have a very strong strategy of not to cause waves until it's time to cause waves, and I know that she's a better strategic player than I am, and so if she has a reason to want to do something, I'm normally just like, okay, that's good enough for me. Let's go execute. So I wish we would have brought Shane. I think that if I could go back, I would fight for him. That might be one of the things that changed the most. Brady, unfortunately, never serious about bringing him in, and whenever he said he wanted to come over, that's great. We'll take you, but it never changed. He never jumped up more than he was never going to be higher than Meredith, never be higher than Patrick. He was probably never going to be higher than Brandon for me. So that's kind of where I was with those guys. Taylor, do you have any thoughts? Haven't heard from you in a while.
Yes, actually, I actually do have a question for you. You kind of just started to touch on it. I was actually going to ask kind of about Brody using the cactus on you. Like, did this affect your relationship with him, considering that like you did kind of want him gone soon? Just since we're kind of hitting the Monopoly around.
Did not affect my relationship with him at all. Brody and I both. Brody does this really cute thing after the games where he says what he was thinking, but it's not what he was thinking at the time. It's now that he's looked over everything, he has the post game footage. He goes back and says, "Oh yeah, I was thinking." Like he swears that he thought it was some genius strategy, and he knew I would distribute the seeds. Remember when he gave me all of his seeds? He was like, "Oh yeah, I knew you'd give them back out." Oh, did you? So he it didn't affect my relationship with him. I knew that at some point there was no way that Brody and I would be in the final three together. No way. It was not going to happen. And at some point, he was going to turn on me or I was going to turn on him. And it just so happened that day two was an excellent working partnership for the two of us. Because he also helped me a ton on day two. I helped him. He helped me. But it didn't change that I knew that I was going to have to get rid of him. Otherwise, he was going to get rid of me. And it all goes back to I have to see Brody at Christmas and Thanksgiving. And the worst thing in my life that can happen is not getting out last or some of these other things. It's if Brody pulls one over on me. That's the worst thing that can happen. So we had to avoid that at all costs.
So now you're going to be the one at Christmas saying, haha, I got you.
And to most people, I wouldn't do it. I will make an exception for Brody.
Will you play rock, paper, scissors with Brody at Christmas? Will anyone play rock, paper, scissors
Play or go
with Brody
home.
at Christmas?
That'll be the Christmas present. Open the box and it's just Ross's hand ready to go.
Yeah. And I think part of, I don't know if it was fully my intention. Like, I don't think I'm some genius who knew he was going to blow up and lose his mind whenever we told him we were getting him out. I wish that I was that smart that I could be like, oh no, I planned that because I knew he'd freak out. I'd say part of it was like, I bet he's not going to react well to this. Let's see what happens. But it was more like I was just in the moment and he was kind of being loud and he called me a liar. And I was like, yeah, you're right. We're getting you out. Let's see what happens. And it worked out perfectly because if he had stayed calm, I think he could have. The only people whose game it suited to get Brody out right there was Meredith and myself. And maybe Patrick, but that's really it. Meredith or I didn't have power, and yet we still managed to get them to vote Brody out. And part of it is because I think Meredith and I are pretty good at the game. But part of it is because Brody just kind of lost his mind for a second there. And by the time he regained composure, it was just too late. Abrielle had enough of him.
That was going to be my next question. Abrielle, after Ross just like tells Brody he's going home, he has no chance to stay ever. Brody's screaming and yelling. And you're just like, everyone shut the fuck up. Like, Brody, go away. Like, walk us through what was going on in your mind as y'all were walking back and Brody was throwing a whole fit.
Here's the thing. There's a lot There's a lot of moments in the game that I found watching back. I was like, oh no. Like looking at myself, I was like, no, bestie, don't do that just because you're annoyed. There was, I was willing to cut Shane because I was getting annoyed. I was willing to cut Brody because I was getting annoyed. I was willing to cut Brady because I was getting annoyed. If these men could just shut the fuck up for 2 seconds, it would have been fine. The Brody round, here's the thing. Everybody keeps giving me shit about not saving Brody. In my mind, I was like, okay, I know like Meredith, Patrick, Ross, Jessica. Who else was over there?
That was the 4.
That was the 4. And I was like, okay, there's still me, Brady, who I know I'm working with, Lily, who I know I'm working with, Brandon, who I'm working with, but Brandon's doing Brandon. We're still even. Like, Brody's pissing me off. Like, I really don't need him. And also, I had no reason to save Brody. Like, with the cactus saving Ross and Patrick, I was like, oh, so we're not working together? Like, why would you do that, doofus? Going into day 3, my opening, like, morning interview, I was like, Brody's gotta go. Like, what are we doing here? And then me, as a highly, like, I very high functioning anxiety, like, I'm gonna get overstimulated very easily. So I was already ready to cut Brody. But then Ross is like, nobody play rock, paper, scissors with Brody. He's going home. In my mind, I was like, this man's telling me what to do. I'm going to do the opposite. So there was a moment where I was like, when I have one of my favorite things that I do during the day where I'm like, look at me when I say chill, stop. That was me telling Brody, I will help you if you shut the fuck up, if you calm down, because right now you running around yelling at people. Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. Don't yell with me in the vicinity. I'm not good with that. Like, don't do that. It's going to piss me off. I was like, Ross texted me after an episode and was like, I'm sorry if I like yelled too much. I'm sorry if I did something wrong, if I made you upset, because I said something at one point in the game, just like, I can't handle it. So with all the yelling, I was like, okay, Ross is telling me what to do. I'm going to do the opposite. And then it was like, oh my God. Okay, I'll try to save Brody, but good God, can you make it any harder for yourself? Like, if he would have calmed down and just like sat with me for a second, it didn't even have to be in a one-on-one. If he would have just calmed down and like sat with the right group of people for 30 seconds, it could have been fine. But had to go off the wall, yelling, screaming, causing shit. Y'all, it's 9 a.m. It is like maybe 8:30, and right off of the bat, we're yelling and we're screaming and telling me what to do, telling me what not to do, telling us we're all stupid. Like, like, it was so overwhelming. I was like, okay, I can try to save Brody, and I think it could have worked, but he sure as hell didn't make it easy. So why was I going to stick out my neck and like work against this grain when Brody and I haven't really talked that much anyway? We had the cactus where like you save people that I'm actively not working with that I've told you I'm worried about. Why is that supposed to make me more comfortable? Why would I have saved Brody? And in my mind, I was like, okay, well, we already have 4 people and they have 4 people. And I think maybe if we get Jessica in the right mindset, Jessica will come work with us, which I still think could have been plausible. And it was just the right things weren't said at the right time. So why would I save Brody? It wasn't clicking. Like, the math wasn't mathing. I was like, I don't need to. Brody's pissing me off. Go home. Let's make it an easy round because I'm tired of this. And I still had the thought of like, okay, it's early in the day on day 3. Like, surely this side is going to wake up and, after this, we'll be able to all work together. No. What the hell? What was going on? Anyway, That's my answer.
Okay, I want to speed up a little bit because I do want to talk about the finale. But I think we have to touch on, I think, the biggest auction in Greenhouse history. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. Is it? Yes. Taylor, fact check me in the comments. But Abrielle, you finally are like, you know what? I'm going to save my girl Lily, take all my seeds. We're talking about the next round when Patrick leaves. But for those watching, I think the biggest thing I want to hear from Meredith and Ross before we get into Abrielle lying about giving her seats to Lily is, do you guys think you just completely overthink this round as you form this move to backdoor Abrielle? Because I don't think it was y'all's intention to send Patrick home here, unless I'll let y'all speak on that.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Was I overthinking this round? No, I was not thinking this round. What had happened to me where I was at in the game is that I had just sort of approached Brandon of like, what if we do a surprise different 3 and I abandon my allies? And then he and Abrielle are really receptive to that. But then I go back and have a conversation with Ross where he makes me shake his hand and I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not a liar or a backstabber. What am I thinking? Why did I say that? And I like that confessional I have in the garage was, I kid you not, like 30 minutes long. I just sat there with Emma Luke holding the camera, like just going over all of it because I could not take it anymore, truthfully. And so during the Patrick round, I was still not like fully recovered because now I have so many people approaching me, and then Lily comes to me with this deal of like, oh, if you don't vote for me, then you'll be safe next round. And I was like, okay. And I just started agreeing to way too many things. And I emotionally can't handle that. I am not built for this. I can play these games, but I cannot play them without bringing myself into the game the way I think some people do. And I feel guilty about like lying to people and betraying anyone. That's just not my game. And so when I was put in that position, I wanted to throw up. And you see, like, even a couple of scenes where, like, Abrielle and Jess were like, are you okay? Are you feeling better? Because they could tell I can't hide anything. I look physically ill because I was about to pass out if someone asked me a direct question and I had to decide whether or not to lie. So when Ross and Patrick are like, yeah, we're going to secretly backdoor Abrielle, we're going to nominate Patrick, I was like, do whatever you want. This was, like, the one round I was not in charge of the strategy. And it's because I had already tried to over-strategize. And I was basically trying to like stay conscious and not pass out. So I don't know if they were doing, I don't know what I was doing. And then people started asking me for seeds and I couldn't form sentences. Like, I was completely lost and it was my own doing. But yeah, so I had no idea what was going on, truthfully. That was out of my hands. And by the time I sort of like woke up and got back into the game, because I realized Patrick was about to go home, it was too late. And I'm, in fact, very gullible, so I believed Abrielle had seeds. I believed her when she lied. Y'all were saying, like, nobody believed her. No, I'm truthfully very naive often, and I believed her. She said it very matter of fact. So I'm easy to trick. And then when Brandon said, like, oh, we have the seeds, we can outbid you no matter what, that's truly what made me stop, because I was still considering giving Patrick my last seed. I had not fully decided. I really didn't want to, because I felt like we needed seeds later in the game, and I think Taylor explained it really well last week with Edmund on the podcast, saying that like the game is built about balance, that whoever has power, the other side has seeds, and so on and so forth. And so going into the next round not knowing if we'll have power and having no seeds for the next several rounds, because the game was not fully in the end game yet, made me very concerned. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But when Brandon said, like, we're outbidding you anyway, I was like, okay, then there's no point. Then it's just over. And Patrick asked me to do it symbolically, and I'm glad that I didn't, because that like could have gone any which way. But by that time, we had sort of settled things, because Brandon had come in and said, like, okay, so maybe not Abrielle, and if you guys are losing Patrick, then like us as a 3. And since I'd been working with Brandon since literally round 1, I felt like I did have enough trust and loyalty built with him over the course of this game, even when it didn't look even remotely similar to the loyalty and the gameplay I had with Ross, or with someone like Patrick or Shane. Brandon was not my ally in the same way, but our alliance was still present throughout the game for me. And that means a lot to me. The fact that he approached me and saw my value as an ally, and that we were able to protect each other on opposite sides of the house had been very important to me and was very meaningful to me. And so when he said at the end, like, there's nothing you can do for Patrick and it might be for the best anyway, I want to go all in with you guys. I was willing to take him on and to do that because I felt like he had earned that loyalty from me. So yeah, I have no idea what happened strategically. I truly was not in charge. That was a Ross and Patrick operation, and I was, I was still in my spiral.
I think that we had way too much confidence. I think it was, I don't know if it was overthinking. I think it was a good plan, but we just skipped one very, very vital step is when you have a shitload of seeds, go ahead and just buy the seed count and see what you're going up against. And that is the one step that we missed. If we had done that, I think it would have been just a different game, because if we had done that, we probably wouldn't have tried to do the plan and we would have pivoted to something else. I'm not sure what. But being that we did do that, we didn't, or at least I didn't know at the time. But once Patrick was gone and we lost our ally, but we had so many seeds and the other side didn't have any, and we still had Green Thumb, it was kind of a wrap at that point. It was just like cleaning up, which is not the most entertaining per se, but it was just kind of inevitable, unfortunately, at that point. I won't speak for Meredith, but actually I will speak for Meredith. We didn't plan on getting Patrick out there. We wanted to take that 3 to the finals, or at least I did. Meredith did. Patrick might have had different ideas. And so I don't think that was an overthink. I think we just skipped a step of buying the seed count. And if we had done that, it would have gone very differently. And I do just quick addendum. I don't know how much I yelled in the Brody round, Abby. If I did, I am sorry. But I do think I'm conflated with Brody here. I think I was pretty calm that round. But if I did, I genuinely do apologize.
No, it's okay.
But I will say I probably did tell you what to do at some point, which is a no-no, because I also don't like when people tell me what to do. I'm going to try to do the opposite. So you do have me on that one. Very fair.
Abrielle, let's talk about your big moment and this whole plan to backdoor you and your death stare you give to Jessica so you do not go up on the block.
Don't look at me like that. It was just so funny. Like, at this point in the day, I was just so over it. Like, oh my God. Nobody's listening. Nobody's doing what they want. Like, it was just like, Brandon put up Brady. Bestie, what? I'm sure I'll talk about this at the reunion, but like, Brandon's a fool. Brandon's a damn fool. It could have been fine. Brandon probably would have won if he didn't do what he did. It would have been so easy. It would have been so easy for Brandon to go through with this, like, this final 4 that I had in my mind at this point in the night was like, okay, me, Lily, Brady, Brandon. And Brandon probably would have cut me and Brandon probably would have won. But Brandon lost because Brandon's dumb and was drinking the Meredith juice, which is fine. But y'all, oh my God. Dumb. Anyway, so at this point in the night, I'm like, okay, well, obviously this side's steamrolling. Obviously my time is limited. Let's throw some wrenches. I have a lot of seeds. Lily is like one of the only people that I have left that I can truly rely on. I'm not just going to let her die. I'm annoyed. So here's all my seeds. Do what you got to do. I put my pot back and I was like, I'm just going to sit here. And I wish that I had come up with some sort of like hand signal for me and Lily to like stop the bidding, because to keep up my lie, I was like, okay, is anybody really going to buy this? I don't know, but I'm going to commit. So I just sat in the room and didn't move, because the more I moved, the more people would think I'm giving away seeds. So I just sat there and I tried to look at Lily at one point and go like, give her a little of like a stop, because I knew I had that feeling. Like Meredith, like they could have won. They had one more seed. We were out. If she would have given that seed, it would have been over. And I tried to give her that look of stop bidding, pull out. They're gonna lose all their seeds, because I was like, if we have all the seeds, they don't have any, we're gonna be fine. We can flip this. And then they didn't use that last seed. And out in the open, me trying to commit to the bit of I didn't give any seeds. I'm not in this. I don't care. It's not like I could pull Lily aside and tell her to stop. It's not like I could just like tell her in the room, because it just would have been so obvious, as if it wasn't obvious already. I was like, okay, well, if anybody's buying this, like I can't ruin it now. And obviously it worked. I feel like if I had pulled Lily aside and told her to stop bidding and Patrick did come down, I would have gone up. But I'm an actress. What can I say? It was it the best move for my game? Probably not. I could have used those seeds. I really could have. But based on how everything went, I was dead in the water anyway. Might as well have stirred some shit up. You think you're gonna backdoor me? Not that easy. Not that easy. What are you doing? Come on. And like, okay, I could have just bought Uproot myself. That is probably one of my finest moments of, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that.
It was like the 20 seconds of silence before you actually said, "Don't look at me like that." It was just like a glare, like
I could tell what she was doing, and I was about to be like,
mhm.
"Oh, because I will lie. I will lie. I don't mind it in games, but I know lying's part of the game. But if you lie to me, I will call you out for it. Because especially at that point in the game, like, I'm dead in the water. Everybody's left me in the boat, and someone shot a hole in the bottom. So now I'm thinking, like, of course I'm gonna do whatever I have to do. And when I get like, that's when I play best, is when my back's against the wall and I have to get kind of scrappy. I would have just started making shit up if I had to. And at some points, I definitely do. Like, I definitely do just start making shit up, and like people just go along with it at some points. But I was like, well, I'm really just gonna like do whatever I can to save one of the only allies if not the only ally I have left. Of course, I'm gonna try to save her. My queen, my bestie, my angel. So yeah, and it was. I'm not gonna let Jessica put me up. I'm sorry. No. You told me you weren't putting me up, so you're not putting me up. No. Don't.
So skipping ahead, because I feel like the Lily round was pretty self-explanatory, other than Ross using green thumb, which we all weren't surprised at that point.
That was dirty. Like, there was
I think what
no
was
reason
dirtier was the auction at the final six when they repurchase it to further ensure that you do not make it to the final four.
The episode title was pretty spot on. Like, just take me out back and put me down. We don't have to like look at this dead horse on the ground and just keep hitting it. Just keep hitting it. Just keep hitting it. No, we don't have to do that. It was not. It wasn't.
The glasses. She took them off to murder.
It was.
Oh my God.
It was sad. That last challenge at Final 5, we could have just skipped the whole round.
Well, my question to you is, so you're on the block next to Jessica, and Brandon, one of your supposed allies for the longest time, should have been with you, is the sole vote this round. Sole vote. What was there ever any thought that like Brandon should save you here, because now you are 2 of the 4 going into the final?
Well, at that point, I had no reason to think that Brandon was working with me anymore. It was quite obvious. Okay, getting rid of Brady All right, fine, I can let that go. Letting Lily die, I don't know, bestie. Putting me on the block with Lily, what are you doing? It was very obvious that the brain cells weren't working anymore at that point in the day. Look, I'm sorry. Like, Brandon knows I love Brandon. I'm obsessed with Brandon. But I will stand in my stance of that's the reason Brandon lost, is because he was dumb enough to take Meredith and Ross to the finals. Because Brandon easily wins against Lily and Brady. Brandon probably also beats me at the finals, but you had a clear and easy way to take out this steamroll alliance that everyone in the jury wanted to lose. Like, when I came in at jury, they were so upset because it didn't even matter if my game was better than theirs or not. I just wasn't them. So, like, huh? Okay. So at that point, I have to, like, try to give Brandon a reason why it's better to keep me over Jessica, which it wasn't. So, like, I just had to talk out of my ass for a while, but I knew it was over. And I think later on, it might be post ending, like post winter crowning, but Brandon at one point came up to me and was like, "You almost got me." Which, like, did I? Ugh. Anyway, I'll
Well,
save some of that for
Abrielle,
the reunion.
I will say though,
Yes.
if Brandon does that, we still had all the seeds. Well, I say we. Meredith had all the seeds, and we probably seed count and figure out. Maybe we decide, like, all right, well, we'll go final 2. I think you could have made it to final 4, but I'm still not sure that you guys can make it to the end there.
See, I'm talking about had Brandon's greenhouse with putting up Brady, that round with Brady going home, that was what really solidified it. Because thereon, I was like, "Oh, you're a dumbass."
My bad. I misunderstood.
And then my point of, like, the taking you to 4 was because you could have, like, convinced him, oh, they're gonna take Jessica to 3 over you, but they won't take me to 3 over you. That was, like, kind of where I was getting at it, but
well,
like you said, the brain cells were gone.
Just to break that 5th place curse.
It like,
you own that club, 5th place.
whatever I was gonna say, it was gonna go in one year and out in another. So, like,
well, and in Brandon's defense, I think he knows that wasn't true. That, like, you can make that argument for pretty much anyone but me, that, like, a logical person is gonna bring Jessica to the final. And I am not. That's contradictory to my flytrap round when I asked Ross what else is there but logic. But truthfully, when it comes to the end game, for me, it was about loyalty. And while, like, I had worked with Jessica, we were never, like, as solid allies. She was truly with Ross and Patrick, and she was never with me in a meaningful way. But Brandon knows me, and he knows my game from season 1. He has seen me play enough to know that odds are I'm going to stay with loyalty at the end, and that I'm not going to bring Jessica over him because I've made him promises, and we've been working together from the first minute of this game. So in his defense, like, it would not have been a faithful prediction, and a lot of people were expecting me. And we can get to that later, because I know people have thoughts and opinions on my final immunity decision. But yeah, in Brandon's defense, it was accurate that I wasn't bringing him.
I want to talk about moving into the finale now. I want to talk about Final 4, where basically General Ross is like, you gotta go, Jessica. There's nothing you can really do. And Jessica just goes, okay. Which was kind of sad because I feel like she didn't even try to, like, have those one-on-one conversations to see if she could flip anything at all. Especially after all these people before her were telling her, like, you're going to get 4th, you're going to get 4th, you're going to get 4th. And ultimately she does. So this kind of ties to one of your answers, Ross, about betraying Jessica, because even when she leaves, she still kind of, like, is rooting for you.
Yeah.
But then you kind of outrightly say, I manipulated Jessica. I played her like a fiddle. And Jessica just starts crying.
Yep.
And
You did.
my heart broke for her because
For her, what about for me?
not
For
too much.
Jessica.
For Mother Jessica. Because she cried a few times during that finale. So I don't know if that was just everything hitting her at once.
It was
To where
the
she's like,
roles.
oh, it was like, yeah, it was all true and I fell for everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So did you do that because you thought you had a good enough relationship with her to kind of single her out and not have to taint the chances of the other jury members voting for you? Or was that truly genuine, or a mix of both, I guess?
It was genuine. It's what was true, and I was hoping that, like, from a game perspective, she would appreciate, like, okay, this person, like, oh, Jessica, so sorry, I really am. You really were my ride or die that whole game. So get down. From a game perspective, it was true, and that I had manipulated her. But at that point of jury, it was desperation mode. I could tell that I was getting the shit kicked out of me by Meredith and Brandon. And I don't know if you guys watched that jury. They were like a bunch of sharks circling water, including Abby right here. They were like, I want to know what you did, who you fucked over, why you did it, all this stuff. And I didn't have a bunch, or for some reason, that's all I could think of right there is like, that was I could have done the Ava, I suppose. There were better routes to go than telling Jessica straight to her face that I just lied, manipulated the whole game. A clear misstep. But I thought in my mind, like, I have to just fight back at some point, and maybe the other jurors will appreciate I did.
Oh.
So sad.
I love her so.
I'm so sorry, Jessica. I really am. I thought that they needed ruthlessness. Yeah. That they needed some ruthlessness, and that was the most ruthless thing I could come up with. And I thought in Brody's mind, in Christian's mind, in Shane's mind, like, okay, Ross is finally like getting dirty. But it was too late by that point. And there's also some conversation about some people, like, I don't think some people fully appreciated how tight me and Jess were, and that she really did have my back. And I had her back, by the way. A lot of people were wanting to use Jessica as a number. I was one of the few that, like, I feel like I was trying to include her and stuff. When we did Pictionary, she went in the greenhouse instead of me. But anyway, that was just a pure desperation move, trying to swing for the fences because I knew that I was getting beat, and I thought that I needed to get some of the more cutthroat jurors back on my side. And looking back, I probably shouldn't have done that. And I'm sorry again, Jessica.
I want to touch on the jury roundtable really quick because you kind of see the shady boys, jurors 1 through 4, kind of trying to dictate how this jury should be thinking, that their opinions are correct, their entire read on the game is correct. And then you kind of have Patrick, then Lily come in, and then Lily leaving, and then Abrielle coming in. And they're like, no, I don't think so. I don't think you guys are giving Meredith enough credit. Abrielle, how did it make you feel that they were trying to discount your opinion when you were the last juror to join the roundtable with the most information? And then Ross and Meredith, how did it make you feel watching it back?
You thought they were going to listen to me? Me? What was new? What was new? Love them all dearly. But some of those boys are the kind of people where, like, you can grab them by the shoulders and shake them and say, wake up, wake up. And they're still asleep. Like, it's not going to work. So I'm just going to keep talking, because the more that you talk, the more they can't talk, and the more they can't hear themselves talk and agree with themselves. So you just have to keep talking. So that's what I did, because Meredith and I, we've been here before. She's bested me before. She did it again. So I'm going to give that girl her flowers. Quit sleeping on Meredith. Y'all wake up. You're still underestimating her after she sent you all home? Dumb. Wake up. That was my quote for the season is wake up. Because it was just exhausting. So I was like, y'all really had no clue what was going on, huh? That's why you went home. That's why you went home. Because you were so in your own worlds that you simply weren't paying attention. Ross was driving the bus, but Meredith had the map. They would have been dead in a ditch somewhere if she didn't have that map. Okay? She had the map. She had the Spotify. She made sure that the AC was on the right temperature. She had the next available gas station queued up, like ready to go if they needed snacks. She had a whole ice chest in the back with all their drinks. What do you guys think was going on? Mama. So it very much was like, okay, I know y'all have been here alone, just like chit-chatting for a while, but y'all really weren't paying attention, huh? Wake up. It was frustrating.
Meredith even had them in body bags, literally in the back of the class.
Yeah, they also made a stop. Like, she made a planned stop to Home Depot for them to get shovels and trash bags and bleach and rope, and just like kept trucking along. Iconic. Truly. Like, I bowed down. It was, y'all give her flowers. Even though
what you said was that you were undecided.
Oh, that's just because I was pissed off. Ignore me. Like,
flowers, though.
It was, well, and it was very apparent, especially to me at that point in the game, that like you and Ross really did do a lot of things together. So I was like, okay, I need to see who sells it best. So I wasn't wrong in saying I was undecided, but like, and I like, it wasn't like I was telling them that they were wrong for rooting for Ross, because they were all very team Ross. But I was like, if you guys are team Ross, then you also need to be open to team Meredith, because they were working together this whole time. So it wasn't even that I was like, bow down to the queen, Meredith did it all, playing, 5D chess. It was, okay, y'all are sleeping on someone who did just as much. Like, come on. Just because she wasn't actively like running around like Ross and like being the face of these things doesn't mean she wasn't doing anything. Y'all think she wasn't doing anything? Bye. That's why you're sitting here.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Oh, no, I think you should go next.
I guess watching the jury roundtable, a little disappointing, because it did seem like I had a bit of a lead going into like the home stretch. And I will agree with something Gabrielle said, that if you're going to be for me, you have to also be open to the idea of being for Meredith, and vice versa, because it was like a Shaq and Kobe thing. Like, we did everything together. I don't think either one of us controlled the relationship, and I think both of us were very receptive to like what the other thought and what the other wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And so I think I probably did have a little bit of lead, especially with the Shady Boys going into the jury round, and I just got beat. That's all there is to it. I went up against someone who was more prepared than me. Meredith and I we didn't know each other. Had we ever met before Greenhouse All Stars? And we've become friends. And at some point between then and now, like, we just were texting, and she was like, oh yeah, the night before day 3, I was like kind of thinking over what my jury speech would be and how I should do it, and like which points I would make. And I was thinking, you were thinking about jury. I was still trying to figure out how to get there. My whole thing was get to jury. Here's one thing about me, guys. I hung out with a lot of football players in high school, and we went to like field parties, and our idea of fun wasn't playing Luke Survivor Goat Island. We were doing other things, and compared to them, I will out-talk all of them in a heartbeat. I will fucking smash them in a jury round. I did not – what's the meme? I was not familiar with their game. And so whenever I go up against Brandon and Meredith, beforehand, I'm thinking I would be I'd be fine. I was confident in my game that I'd done enough to win, and I would just out-talk them. And boy, did I not out-talk them. So I think that second place is I'm completely fine with it. I think Meredith and I did a lot of that together, and so I think that overall, if you're going to be for me, you have to be for Meredith, and vice versa. And if it comes down to who had the better jury round, Meredith had the better jury round. So it makes sense that she was the one that won.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on the jury round, but it was definitely an oversight on Ross's part. I was born thinking about the jury. Everything I did in this game, I was
born thinking about the jury.
I was born thinking about the jury, and I everything I did in this game, I did thinking about the jury, and that was very effective. Especially because when I get to jury, a lot of my really good answers were about pre-jury banishments, so that no one here has as much personal investment in things like, oh, I manipulated the shit out of Ava. Oh, like I was the one who nominated Thomas and Shakira. No one here has a personal stake in that, so I avoid some of the bitterness. Like, these are just things that I was calculating the entire game. Yes, I planned at least like 40% of my jury speech the previous night. I did not sleep at all. And yeah, like I'm working on a PhD in linguistics, and I'm a former theater kid, so can I talk? Yes, I'm going to talk. It's what I have trained my entire life to do, either in theater or in literal linguistics. So big rip. I think sometimes that kind of skill gets overlooked in this game. And it continues to be overlooked. See, this is part of my thing. I don't know what it takes for my skills to be recognized, because it feels like I've proven myself in a lot of games. And I go into the next game thinking, this time they're going to take me seriously. I'm going to be seen as a threat because I did too well last time, and it hasn't once happened. Because this is not my first jury speech. There's a jury speech I already gave in a game I already won, available for free on YouTube. And if you didn't do your research because you only watched The Greenhouse, womp womp.
I won.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. You didn't watch me win a game, so you don't know what you're up against. And this isn't a call out to Ross, but no, Christian, you were literally there. You watched me give a winning jury speech. And I know Christian was only trying to play with people he thought he could beat at the end. And that was a wildly delusional take that me and Abrielle were in that group. Anyway, so the jury roundtable was mildly infuriating to watch because, yeah, they were very much on the Ross train. And that was frustrating knowing the way that we played the game was as a duo. And like I explained in like the first thing I said in this game, because we trusted each other 100%. That meant he trusted me to do a lot of the strategy, and I trusted him to take care of like getting the word out and the social aspects that I can't handle. I don't come across well. I don't really know how to finesse people and communicate. It takes a certain type of person to just get me. And if you don't, you don't. And I can't really salvage that. So I'm able to make relationships with people like Ross, who was a stranger, but who apparently just got me, and it worked. And someone like Brandon, who I'd met before and had time enough to get to understand how I work and how I communicate, and to learn that that was something he could adapt to, because it didn't work the first time. He hardly spoke to me in Greenhouse 1. It just didn't happen. But in this game, he learned and knew how to work with me, and wanted to. And so that was effective. But since I'm not a social player, and it's not that Ross isn't a strategic player, but like I said, we got to play to our strengths because of the trust that we were able to build with each other. And I felt like this jury in an All-Stars game, and these people in particular, were going to want to honor the strategy more so than the social aspect. And even though both parts are invaluable and we could not have done it without each other, and if it was up to us, like, we'd crown a double winner. Like, that's just, like, Ross and I talk about this game extensively, and we've become such good friends from it that, like, that's how we see it. Like, we could not have done it without the other. And I just happen to be a better speaker, and I happen to be giving credit for most of the strategy. And I did some of the social aspect and some of the other things as well. So I think one of the main frustrating things for me about the jury roundtable was that they were just, like, factually wrong about a lot of stuff. And like they didn't correct each other for most of it, even when some of them knew what they were saying wasn't true. And so that was like really, really annoying to me because they're saying like, oh, what has Meredith even done? Ross has had so much more power than Meredith. When? When? Because do you mean the Venus flytrap? Do you mean that is that the only power in the game? Because that's what I have to wonder. Because if you look at like day 1 and 2, Ross and I obviously play very different games. Day 1, I was setting myself up and he was in panic defense mode. It like just can't be compared. We're in very different states. But we handle our shit night 1. Day 2, I'm Sunflower round 3, and I nominate 2 power players of the game in a huge move that no one else was going to be willing to do. I take a massive shot very publicly, make enemies for myself, and take a stance in this game as a Sunflower by winning a challenge where I chose one of the harder paths on the Spot It challenge, by the way, and still got into the greenhouse because I'm a competitor. And I deliberately held back on some of my comp wins this round in this game because I know the reputation that I have, that once she starts winning, she's not going to stop. And so if I started doing that, it was going to draw too much attention to myself. And so I couldn't take that much power in the early game because I didn't want my reputation to catch up with me when it wasn't currently being a problem. So I was actually a flower before Ross was. Ross was a flower during the split house round. And that was, I think, it for both of us day 2, that we didn't have any other greenhouse abilities that day. He used the Venus flytrap. But again, if I'm the person who told him who to use it on, like, obviously it takes a lot of courage to do that, and it's going to be a huge impact on your game, and Ross knew that when he decided to be the person doing it. But it was just very weird to me that they kept insisting that like Ross had so much more public power than me, when that simply wasn't the case. It was just factually incorrect. And day 3, we sort of went back and forth, and we both had greenhouse, and I was forced into 2 seats a lot when I would have taken flowers, and like, but there was simply no reason for the jury to be saying that like Ross had been so much more public than me. I'm just like, public in what way? Because I'm not the kind of person to hide my opinion and to not be vocal about what I think needs to be done. I say what needs to be done, and I'm honest with people. I'm upfront. You ask my opinion, and you're gonna get it. And so I don't understand in what sense like Ross was doing more than me. The only difference I can really get to maybe think about is that, do you mean he was making very similar moves to me in the game while being a man? Because if you look at who was standing up for me in jury, we have Lily and Abrielle, and we have Patrick, who has been a close friend of mine in real life. And I know super well, and he knows me super well. And so the fact that Patrick was the person defending me is not surprising at all. But he also like knew my game much better than the rest because he had been in that game with me as like a very close ally the entire time. And so the fact that the 4 other men in the room were very much straight up wrong about my position in the game, about my social standing in the game, my strategy in the game, and were willing to write off basically anything that I have done as not good enough. It's just interesting to me when it was so similar to Ross's, and that the footage sort of shows how wrong they were about a lot of those things, and the way that they contradict themselves is also really infuriating to me. That Brody brags throughout this game about how he's getting other people to do his dirty work, and then when it's, well, Meredith is manipulating everything behind the scenes, he's like, well, like, that's not impressive. You have to be the person taking the shots. I was like, okay, but not when you're doing it. And then he brags about how safe he was this entire game, all the immunities that we let him have. And when it's brought up how safe I was, he's like, yeah, she was just given like a free ride through this game. But I didn't have to earn it through immunities like I've already done, because I've already played that game, been there, done that. I've already, accomplished what he did in this game and placed higher than he did while doing it. So that's interesting. But anyway, but when I was safe continually without having literal immunity, and my social game was what was protecting me, that's no longer impressive, and it's no longer worth anything. So I just find that really interesting. And when he went to vote, he had literally nothing to say about me in his voting confessional. And I thought it was really interesting that he couldn't actually give a particularly good reason why he wasn't voting for me. I've known Brody since kindergarten. So he's the one person who's like feelings. I'm like, whatever. We have been in an active feud since like the first grade. So don't worry about me and Brody. It is like we live like this. But it was frustrating to watch them be wrong, and for like Shane, for example, who like knew a lot of the fact that like I was behind the scenes motivating a lot of these decisions, making a lot of these strategic moves with Ross, that he wasn't defending me either, that he was one of the people questioning me, that Christian was able to see that like I was a huge part of the reason that he went home after being also the reason that he was saved the previous round, and then still says, but what is Meredith doing? And why isn't she doing it publicly? Like, I did, and you saw it, and it hit you on the way out. So I just don't understand, like, where that all went when we got to the jury round table, and why no one else was able to see it besides Patrick and Lily and Abrielle. And I also have no idea what happened with Lily's vote. Because in the jury round table, she was like, Meredith runs this game. You guys are blind if you don't see it. And then she votes for Ross after not being present for the jury round. And I have no idea. I genuinely don't know what happened there. And like, I mean, a vote for Ross is a fair vote because he played a great game, but I was just sort of confused because I forgot who voted for who. I only remembered having Shane, Christian, and Patrick's vote. I didn't know who my fourth one was. And so I was sort of confused after watching the jury roundtable that it wasn't Lily's. So that was crazy. But anyway.
Don't worry, we'll bring that up at the reunion.
So moving into finale stuff. Last question for Ross before you go. Like, just kind of give me your thoughts on the questions that you received, and then was there any votes that you thought that you were gonna get that you did not receive?
I think in a normal season, or maybe not even a normal season, I think if I go up against anyone probably besides Meredith and Brandon, I probably win the season. At least with the game that I played, I think that I could have talked it up enough. I just happened to go against the person who I did everything with, and she's better at talking than me, and Brandon, who's the most charming human ever born. So it was a tough draw for your guy. But I chose that route, so like I get it. No ill will, like, and I wouldn't have changed anything, by the way, because like that's one of the things that going into Final Four when it was me, Jessica, Brandon, and Meredith. That round was quick, but that round could have been very long because the only people that I was signing off on getting final immunity were myself and Meredith. And I would have argued until I died if someone else wanted to have final immunity because I knew Meredith wasn't afraid because that's just not who she was, and she was going to be loyal. And I knew I was going to do the same thing. And I'd gotten backstabbed in my previous season, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. I knew Meredith wasn't going to do it. So I might have lost track of the question. Oh, as far as like questions go, none of them really surprised me. I think I think it being my first jury probably shows, and I probably could have done a better job at taking credit for some stuff. And I also probably should have brought up the fact that the green thumb, I bought it on like the beginning of day 2 and I didn't play it to the end of day 3. I should have shined more light on that. Just too much stuff going in my head, mush brain. But none of the questions, I think it was a smart jury. I think a lot of them, when they were explaining their reasons for voting, were eloquent and they all had good reasons. Shane, the way he spoke, I think it was a good jury and they were smart and it was an all-star jury. And I'm very proud of the season. I had a blast. And I think I probably would have thought I was going to get Brody and Christian and Shane's vote. And the fact that I went 0-3 with them, a little surprising to me. But I also understand why each of them voted the way they did. And so I have no problems with any of that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming, Ross. We know that you have to go.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I'm going to listen
watching
to this.
you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I'll see you guys soon. I don't know, maybe if we get together again. I don't know. We'll see if that happens or something.
Everyone come to Nashville.
Yes, come to
Guys.
Nashville.
Sign me up.
Bye, Ross.
Mother
So-
clown.
Grandmother, you were on the jury. So kind of walk us through why you asked your question and like just your thoughts throughout the whole jury segment.
And did you specifically request to go last?
Maybe I kind of don't remember. Like I said, war flashbacks, everything's blur. It was the longest jury segment of my life. It was cut down. There was more. Love them, but man, can they talk. Man, which I get because I also never shut the fuck up. So, but there was a lot of like I applaud them for taking every opportunity that they had to talk about their game, even if it wasn't specifically answering the question, because I also would have done the same thing, I think. And it was so long that like full battery cameras were dying in the middle of recording it. Like they just kept going. But I think it worked out because when we came in and we were like, we want to know it all, like we wanted to know it all, because I feel like by the time that we got into the jury questioning, I think a lot of people were kind of up in the air. Like, I think there was the realization that like, okay, Meredith and Ross did kind of like have very similar games. They did do everything together. Like maybe some people didn't see as much as Brandon, so, like of Brandon playing the game. So they wanted to know like absolutely everything, lay it all on the table, no details too small. And that's what we wanted. That's what they gave us. They did give us every detail. My question specifically is one of my favorite questions to ask, because this is like, these games aren't new to me. Like I play them online all the time. This is probably one of my favorite questions as a jury member to ask, which is, whose jury vote do you think you have and why? In case anybody forgot the question, because by the time they were done answering, I had definitely forgotten that was the question I asked. But it's one of my favorite questions to ask because it's a lot about your perception. It's a lot about their perceptions of how the game went, of their perception of their own space in the game, of other people. How well did you understand the other players? Because I think that says a lot about you as a player, of what was your perception like, and it kind of tells me whether or not they're delusional as a finalist. It tells me like how in touch with reality they really are at this point. Like, were they in tune the whole time? Were they drunk with power? Are they just like very much out of the loop? They have no idea what any of us are actually thinking. I think it's very helpful for that last kind of like, how do you view yourself as a player? How do you think the jury members view you as a player? And how do you think that's going to bode for your final votes? Like, are they going to value relationships more? Are they going to value strategy more? Are they going to value social? Like, it tells me a lot about them as a player, and then helps me make their decision based on how they answer, the content of their answer, and the, I guess, confidence in their answer. You know, did you beat around the bush, or were you straight to the point? I think you have your vote, and this is like, I think I have your vote, and this is because XYZ, and we work together in this game. I think I have yours. I don't think I have yours because I pissed you off, and I don't think you really understand what I did in this game, even though you should. Like, it's one of my favorite questions to ask, for sure. And I think it did help me make a decision. If I wasn't already decided at that point, which I truly don't remember, but I think I was.
And then finally, Meredith. So what do you think was your best answered question from throughout the whole finale? And you kind of already touched on this a little bit, but whose votes were you surprised that you got, or surprised that you didn't get?
So as far as the votes, I don't remember exactly how I felt in real time. I felt very sure of Patrick's vote 1,000%. I think what they didn't show is that I misunderstood Abrielle's question at first, or at least the boys answered it very differently than I did. So I went back and like re-answered it because I was not going to let them take up space that I was not taking up. But my first answer was like Patrick, because he has seen my game most closely besides Ross. So he knows what I've done. He knows the power I've had, and he knew that like his game with Ross didn't exist but for through me, and the others were very misinformed on that. This was like one of the bigger delusions of the game, is that like Ross and Patrick were the power duo. And I think what I pointed out was a scene that did make an episode where in like around maybe Patrick was going home or around before that, I was in a one-on-one with Ross and I asked him, how much do you trust Patrick? And he said, however much you tell me to. And I think people were very misinformed that that was the dynamic, that I was the link between the two. And if I told one of them otherwise, that's how it went. And so having to sort of like explain that I knew Patrick was with me, and I mean me and not us, was a reason I knew I had his vote. And just the fact that like we have a personal history. I knew he was going to be rooting for me because he could not in a lot of ways in this game. I think he maybe a little bit went into like little brother mode. And just like our personal relationship was very apparent, and it's something not many people in the house knew about. And so that's part of why we were sort of clocked as allies, even before we were very set in an alliance. It's just because we know each other so well that we were acting much closer than people had reason to expect that we were. Which on the other side of the coin is like why my relationship with Ross and Shane in particular were sort of like for free, because no one really thought we had reason to put so much faith in each other and be so loyal when we literally just met and were strangers. And a lot of people in this game came in with biases and predetermined ideas of who they wanted to work with, and it was often people they already knew, whether in-game or out. And so I think they were sort of caught off guard by two complete strangers being so ride or die with each other. So yeah, Patrick was one of the main ones I was sure about. I was also pretty confident in Abrielle's just because we are so similar, and I know how she thinks. And I thought my answer to her was very convincing, that if you think you should win, then you think I should win. Like, it's the same thing, and it would be illogical for you to vote for anyone else. And it was hard to answer the question. I will say particularly like as an autistic person, I'm very bad at putting myself into other people's headspace and blocking out my own in particular, that like I could not look at any of them and think like, what reason do they have that I shouldn't win? I can't think of one. I think I should win. And so it was really hard to think of like, well, who wouldn't vote for me? I would, so obviously everyone would. And so it was sort of a tough question for that reason, but I felt like I earned Shane's vote, and that he's such like a strategic player that he would, once I spelled it out, recognize the moves that I made and the reads that I had and that they were correct. And sort of that was my difficulty going into the jury, and with the way Abrielle frames that question is like, do you understand the way people view you? Yes, and they're viewing me wrong. And I knew that. I knew going into the jury that my biggest hurdle was going to be convincing them that I did what I did, and I played the game that I played, and having them believe me that it was me over Ross, because I knew they wanted it to be Ross. And, you know, it wouldn't be a Meredith game if I wasn't the underdog at some point. And just because it was in the jury round doesn't mean it doesn't count, but I put myself in an underdog position at the last minute after being safe the whole game, just to make it, you know, that little Meredith flavor. It's because that's how I play. I gotta win from behind. So that's just how it works. But yeah, it is a great question. But that, I think maybe Christian's vote surprised me a little. I actually don't think it did in real time, because I could see the jury when I was speaking, and I could watch Christian's face go from like, I don't believe you, to, oh my God. I watched him be fully convinced by the things that I was saying. And have his mind blown, because I knew he had underestimated me, and I already figured that out. So watching it back, it's more surprising that Christian voted for me, but I remember watching his facial expressions and knowing that I was convincing the hell out of him. But clearly from the way that the season played out and the way he was regarding me and in the jury roundtable, like he didn't have any intention to vote for me. And so the fact that he did, but I know Christian roots for me at least a little bit. When I won Big Brother, he almost snapped my spine in half, hugging me so hard after I won. No one was more enthusiastic that I won than Christian. And so it wasn't ultimately like surprising that he voted for me, because I'm like, oh, you want me to win. I know that you do. Brody not voting for me is the least surprising thing. When you've been rivals since the 2nd grade, you have certain expectations. And I knew Jess had less loyalty to me than to Ross, and I didn't necessarily expect anything either way of Jess. And this is a total divergence, but while I'm on the subject and I have a platform to speak, if you haven't watched the final Fallen All-Star podcast, please go watch that, because a lot of people have been saying a lot of things about Miss Jessica, and a lot of you were wrong. And I think her Fallen All-Star exit interview explains her game in a way she never got the chance to. And people will find that they were severely underestimating her, and a lot of things that she did were so much more intentional and strategic than she was given credit for. And I think she's been treated very unfairly and disrespectfully, and I just want to put some respect on Jess's name, because I just believe in what's fair, and I think she deserves her credit. And so y'all go watch that interview, because she does a really great job at explaining her game, and she deserves the chance to do that in a way that is seen, because she didn't get to go do that in front of the jury.
Mother Jessica.
Yeah, truly. No, and like I really enjoyed playing this game with everyone, but she is like such a joy to be around. She did throw me for such a loop with her jury question, though. The way she brought it up of like analyzing past games, I was just like, oh, it's going to be a question about what you learned from your first season. And I was so ready for that question. And then when she said, what is your biggest regret? No, I love you, girl. And what was your biggest regret? Like, I literally had to say like, oh, I was planning a different answer. I have no idea what my biggest regret is. Like, I was totally thrown off. But yeah, no, I'm really proud of my jury round. I don't know what my best answer was. I mean, like, especially because it got sort of chopped up in the edit, that you don't get to really see one of my answers all the way through. And like some of the phrases that I planned out, because I like pre-wrote bits and pieces the night before when I should have been sleeping. And so like some of those didn't make it, some of them did, but like the answer was pre-planned. That had already happened, and I already knew that that would be a really good bit for the jury to be able to explain the way that I was handling the game, the way that I was manipulating people. And half the house wasn't even there for that round, and so would not have access to knowing that that's how that played out. So I think that one went really well. That's one where I remember Christian just like going into complete and total shock at like the handle that I had on the game at that point, and the way I was sort of finessing in a way I don't usually do. And I did think my answer to Everyelle's question was pretty good, because I went on in elaborate detail about like, well, what do you want out of a winner? Because you want a social player, because this is the best social game I've personally ever played. And it wasn't as good of a social game as some of the others, no, but like I was able to do what I needed to do, and I had enough of a social game to stay protected and to have options throughout this game that when I needed to pivot, I didn't as much as I thought I might. But I was able to at any point. I could have. And that's a huge benefit to my game that I've never had before. And it's why a lot of the players underestimated me and expected that I was getting carried, because previously I did not have options and I did not have agency in a game. And so a lot of the jury members thought that I was playing my old games, and that meant that I'm getting just strung along. And that was simply not the case. So I played a pretty good social game. And if you're looking for someone who learned and adapted and changed their game, I did that as much as anyone, and more successfully than anyone else. I changed my game and I made it what it needed to be to win this time. And I think learning your lesson is a huge part of what All Stars is all about, that it shouldn't be like the single deciding factor of who wins. But I think when it comes down to a close game like it did in this case, I think improvement and adaptation is a huge quality that you want to have in a winner. And I did that. And I did hold power. And the jury members sort of conveniently forgot about that during the roundtable. But I made moves in this game. And I contributed to the ones that I wasn't personally, the flower for. And I think having that kind of capital to make those decisions without needing to be holding the power is power. And I think it should be seen as such. And so being able to list, like, well, what do you want? And I have evidence that I did it. I have all of these seeds. Those were mine. I did all of these things. And being able to make that case, it felt airtight to me. It's like, okay, So what else could you possibly want? Like, obviously the people next to me played great games. But if you want to reward a social game or you want to reward whatever, there was just not that much different about Ross's game and mine. And I was able to say that mine had things his didn't that I did alone. And he, whether or not he should have been able to, was not able to point to those things. And so ultimately, like, I thought that was a really good answer. And I forget what the other questions even were. I think part of it was like, yeah, I'm really good at speaking and I gave some really good answers, but also Ross gave some really bad answers. And I love Ross so much, and I'll tell him, I've told him most of this already, but like when Brody asked him, I think like, what was your biggest betrayal, or someone asked something like that. Or no, Brody I think asked what was your like biggest move that only you can take credit for. And Ross said taking out Brody. Like, I think I just genuinely like made a face because I couldn't believe that that's what he was going with when he didn't nominate Brody. And when there's footage of the previous evening, me saying to Ross, we need to take out Brody first opportunity. And he goes, no, really? Isn't it too soon? And I said, no, we're doing it. And he said, okay, if you say so. And like, it wasn't even his idea. And it was like a whole cast unanimous thing. And he didn't do the nominate. I was like, whoa, world, is that your biggest move that you solely take credit for? Like, that was a bad answer. And like Ross said, like, he's just trying to think on the fly, first thing that comes to mind. And so it's not that that's even the most correct answer. It's not. He should have said literally anything else. But it is a flaw of Ross's game, ultimately, that so much of the strategic decisions he does outsource. Because what does he want to say? Green thumb? That having that the entire game was a huge move? It was Shane's idea. Flytrap? Shane and Patrick's idea. But I also controlled who the target was, so Ross can't take sole credit for that. So a lot of his power moves in the game, obviously having allies and having great strategic allies is a huge strength. But at the end of the day, he didn't think about the jury, like he has said, and he wasn't planning these answers and didn't have anything substantial, especially not off the top of his head. So, yeah, it was partially that like I was sort of at an advantage because Ross was not prepared, and he knows that, and he says he would not change a thing, and he'll take me to the jury next time as well, and he'll lose again, and he doesn't mind.
Mother just mothering. I'm so obsessed with you, Meredith.
Literally, stand from the beginning. Season 1, Meredith, you are amazing. The season was great. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Edmund, anything to add before we go ahead and wrap up?
Amazing season this season. I loved having mostly everyone from this season on the podcast. This was an idea that me and Matthew literally just pulled out of our ass when it premiered. And I'm glad we actually put it into motion. Taylor, thank you for fulfilling your 3-episode contract.
Of course.
But
I have a TMZ report. It just in the last TMZ report of this pod. We're hosting the reunion.
Oh my gosh, what a shocker.
What
Wait.
a
Look
shocker.
at that picture of Edmund.
That's me dressed up as Daphne for Halloween.
I'm obsessed.
So this is me and Edmund. We made a seating chart for the reunion. The C is Claire and the B is Brody. Everyone know your seat placements. They're all for a reason. Me and Edmund had a very long discussion about why we put people where we put them. This will be pre-recorded, so there's no live time to tune in, but it is filming soon, and it will be on the Taylor Luke YouTube page when it's out.
Any last minute thoughts, Abrielle and Meredith, on the season to wrap up the podcast?
And
Taylor.
Thank
Why
you.
did y'all invite me?
Because you're queen. Thank you all for doing the podcast. truly one of my favorite parts of the week is not only getting to watch the episodes and relive the horror, but seeing people watch it in real time and like get to share their thoughts and everything like it's a real reality show, because it is incredible, because this is like one of my favorite pastimes. Like, I'm a Big Brother live feeder, okay? I watch those live feeds, and it's hard to find people with that same energy, and this gives that same energy of like, let's analyze these bitches, let's talk about their game. It's also just fun to like have other people as interested in this as like we are. These are one of my favorite things in the world. So thank you guys for having us. Shout out to Taylor and the whole Luke family for just being perfect and amazing all the time. Like I've told Taylor this before, but like I don't think he really understands how obsessed I am. And even my brother made the wiki page and like texted me today like, hey, do you want to, when there's a game in Austin, do you want to go film? And I was like, yeah, we'll make the drive, like it's worth it, like we'll go. So thank you, Taylor, for the amazing games. Thanks to the players for being real ones. I love you. Please don't drag me too hard at the reunion. Yeah, and thanks everyone for watching.
Before I let the queen, the winner, say their piece, I just want to say you both, gosh, the sick is sicking. You both played amazing games. You don't owe anyone anything, and explaining it, we all watched you both do the damn things. The shady boys can be the sad boys. I can't wait to watch the reunion. But yeah, just congrats to you both, and congrats to Ross, who's doing whatever Ross is doing. But thank you for having me be the best active listener tonight that I could be. And maybe you'll see me. Maybe you'll see me soon.
Ross said I could speak on his behalf. So on behalf of Ross, I'll say like similar sentiment. He loves nothing more than playing these games. He's such an enthusiast for doing this. And I think he's one of the rare people who is not like a watcher of these shows and really as deep in the weeds of it as the rest of us are, but he just shows up to play and gives it his all. And so Ross says thank you, and that he loves everyone, and it's the time of his life to play. And yeah, that's what I'll give Ross. For myself, yeah, I have to echo what Abrielle said. To the Luke family, I'm blown away by their generosity in taking the time and space to host us for these games, and they've done so for so long. My first Luke game was when I was 12, 13. I was on the third ever season as Survivor, and my mom would let me sleep over at a boy's house, so I had to forfeit. So that tanks my overall score, and I'm still mad about it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's such a huge honor to play. Like, it's sort of commented on that in the final four scene when the other three are sort of hashing it out, I just sit there completely silent. And I said in the live chat, it's because if I said anything, I was going to start crying. Because to be given final immunity, and it was sort of the same when I won, that it feels like such an honor to have that faith placed in me and that respect given to me. And yeah, it is such like a huge honor when I come into these games, especially knowing I'm autistic and social skills should be like the bottom of my abilities, to be able to play these games and have success with them, and then to have fans and to have people who watch this and like me when they've never even met me and that I come across well, it means the world to me, and it's such a mystery to me, but it's such a beautiful thing, and I love doing it so much, and it's so much fun, and I'm so glad I get to make friends and to have a community, and it's like keeps me coming back to Lafayette. My mom watches this. I love my parents also, but I'm gonna fly to Lafayette to play a Luke game. I'll see my family when I see them, and I'm gonna go down to play a Luke game. I will be on film crew for a greenhouse game the morning of my brother's wedding, so I'll see you guys in Austin. It is what it is. I'm so dedicated to this. I love it so much. And so, yeah, it's just such a huge honor, and I so appreciate the respect, and especially from you guys hosting this podcast. It's been so fun to watch, and it's really amazing to see what you guys think and how much credit you've given me because I wasn't getting that credit in real time. So it's easy for me to get in my head and think like, did I just trick everyone into voting for me at the end? And won on accident because I'm good at speeches. But to see you guys like give respect to my game and to see me as the winner for as long as you did really affirms me and makes me feel like I truly did earn it and do the damn thing. So I really appreciate it. I'm now a menace in terms of my ego. I'm going to be a villain next time. You guys better watch out. But yeah, I love everyone involved so much. Everyone stream Greenhouse forever. Season 6, whenever it comes, y'all better be ready. Because I also analyzed the screenshot Taylor posted on his Instagram page. I've seen some faces that I'm thrilled to see play this game. So y'all be ready for that season when it drops. Let's go.
All right. Thank you all so much. And we'll be back. The Greenhouse podcast for season 6. Thank you so much, everyone.
Wow.